Hey there, Jeff Manchester, Manchester Music. Welcome. My nails are painted. Let's just get that out of the way. My girlfriend did this. I asked for a color that was coordinated with my soul. She chose black. That's why they're like this. So in this video, I want to tackle an important question that I see asked of me a lot on the vodcast, or I see floating around on the web, which is how loud should I master my music? Let's get right into it. And the sub-question is usually how loud should I make my music for music streaming service X, Y, whether it's Apple Music, YouTube, Pandora, Spotify, whatever. There now exists a tool that's free that'll give you an indication of how loud or how quiet your music will be turned up or turned down once it leaves your hard disk and lands on that streaming service. Before I get into the tool, I just want to quickly get something out of the way. When I say turned up, turned down, what am I talking about? Well, the most popular streaming services nowadays, YouTube, Spotify, Tidal, Pandora, and iTunes, they employ loudness normalization technology to address the number one complaint from consumers on those services, which is a little bit akin to the kind of TV commercial problem, which is they're listening to a playlist, they're listening to a series of songs, and one song will be great, and then the next one that comes in will blast their ears because of a loudness difference. So streaming services want to keep people on those services, whether they're paying or free or whatever. And to do this, they've employed loudness normalization technology to make sure that you don't get a huge jump in level once you go from song to song to song to song. Different streaming services have different targets. By this I mean different sort of loudness levels, where if your song is, let's say, minus 16 LUFS and the target loudness is minus 14 LUFS, they will turn it up 2 dBs to bring it to minus 14 LUFS. If your track is, at minus 12 LUFS, and again, the cutoff is minus 14, they will turn it down, just simple gain, to minus 14 LUFS to make sure that when you're putting on your headphones, listening or whatever, you don't get jumps in loudness between songs to make for a very consistent listener experience. So for a while, it's been tricky to know exactly how your music is going to translate across these services and how loud you should make your masters. Well, this tool, which is called the Loudness Penalty, and it's basically just a website, allows you to get a lot of insight into what's going to happen again once your music leaves the hard disk and goes to those streaming services. So I want to talk about this tool, and I want to put a couple of things through it, and then I'll get to my thoughts at the end on some ways I think this thing could improve, some areas that are still a bit fuzzy to me, but let's just get into the Loudness Penalty. Okay, so this is the loudnesspenalty.com. It's as simple as that. You don't need to write in www, just loudnesspenalty.com, and you're good to go. I'm using Chrome. I'm typically a hardcore Safari user. I'm a big Apple fanboy loser, but I was, looking around, and I was told that the best experience for this is currently Chrome. So that's what we're using today. Now, this is what it looks like. Drag and drop an audio file here, MP3 or WAV. Ian Shepard says WAV. I say WAVE. I'm just going to keep saying WAVE. And the important thing here is that, your file isn't uploaded to a server or anything. Everything happens here on the browser. So the process is just 100%, above board, anonymous, secure, whatever. If you're squeamish about uploading to a website, you're not really uploading anything. Everything happens here on the browser. So we can either drag a drop or select a file. So I'm going to go and select a file, and I'm going to go to this loudness penalty thing that I created here. And I have a number of tracks in this folder. We have, because I know a lot of composers watch this channel, A Dark Night. This is the Hans Zimmer soundtrack to that movie. And this was one of the most popular offerings on there. I have How It Started, which is a track that I did a little while ago. I mastered it. I think I mastered it pretty quiet, so we'll see what it sounds like when it comes out the other end. We have Doing It Right. Daft Punk, obviously, one of my favorite songs. Glenn Campbell, Wichita Lineman, another one of my favorite songs, Jasmine by Jai Paul. And I put Despacito in here just to see what it would sound like coming out the other end of the Loudness Penalty website. So let's do this as the first one. So one of the biggest songs, of the century. Let's put it through. This is an MP3, and I'm just going to press open, and we'll see the status bar here load up. It's going to process the audio. I assume it's going to listen, to the entire thing and come up with insight into how loud it is over time, and then put it through the various filters for, again, YouTube, Spotify, Tidal, Pandora, and iTunes, which have different loudness targets. And I should mention those now as we're watching the audio load up here. So For YouTube, the cutoff for YouTube is minus 13 LUFS. And the important thing to note is that YouTube actually doesn't turn up quiet stuff. So if your track is minus 16 LUFS, it's not going to turn it up with simple gain, by 3 dBs or 3 LUs. It's not going to do that. So that's kind of important to know if you're trying to make, the best sounding track dynamically and all that stuff for that service. The next thing is Spotify. So Spotify's cutoff is minus 14 LUFS. And Spotify, unlike YouTube, will turn things up. But I should mention that it won't turn, like all the other streaming services, they're not going to turn stuff up except for obviously YouTube and Tidal. They will not turn up stuff, to the point where it starts clipping, obviously. I think their algorithms can detect that, so they will turn it up, but not to the point of, delivering an irritating listener experience. So minus 14 is their cutoff. So again, using the math that we did before, if your track is coming in at minus 16, it will bring it up 2 dBs to minus 14. And if it's minus 12, they'll bring it down 2 dBs with just some simple gain. So next up we have Tidal. Tidal, minus 14 LUFS. And like YouTube, they will not turn quiet stuff up. They will turn loud stuff down, minus 14 LUFS. Next up is Pandora. Pandora is minus 14. And I guess I should say these are the calculations done by Ian Shepherd, and they're on the Meter Plugs, some of the newsletters and emails that they send out associated with this product. So these are their stats. So minus 14 for Pandora, and minus 16 is the cutoff for iTunes, which is pretty generous. So you get a very sort of dynamic music experience there. So let's have a look here. So we just put through this track, Despacito, obviously. And what it's saying is negative 4.4, negative 5.9, negative 5.4, negative 5.4, and minus 7 on iTunes. What this means is we are going to incur a penalty here. It's going to turn down, if we upload this to YouTube, it's going to turn it down in dBs, in decibels, by minus 4.4 dBs. It's going to turn it down minus 5.9 dBs on Spotify. On Tidal, minus 5.4. Pandora, same thing. And on iTunes, where, again, our loudness cutoff is minus 16, that's why this is a bit steeper, minus 7 dB. So that's pretty surprising. It's not surprising, in so much as it's a pop song, we get it, but it's kind of surprising in that this is like, it's 2018 now. You would expect that, people mastering this stuff would know that the premier venue for new music these days is streaming services, and they would want to maybe target and build something to deliver a very dynamic, positive experience across all these platforms. Considering no one's going to buy this on CD, and probably not too many people are going to download it. They're going to listen to it on their phones or listen to it on their desktops or whatever through streaming services. So it's pretty surprising that we get this really steep loudness penalty from this track. Again, it's just, people should, I'm assuming, know better and want to deliver a better sounding experience for everyone. But I guess the pop world is the pop world for now. But as streaming loudness normalization becomes more, mainstream, maybe we'll see this. This won't be the case with, the Despacito of 3 or 4 years from now once we put it through this website. Let's try another track. By the way, I should mention that if you want, additional information and you want the cutoffs that I just read and a bunch of other stuff, you can actually have a report sent to you. There's one of my old email addresses, but you can type in your own and you can have another report sent to you. You can either refresh the page or press analyze another file. Let's do that. Let's just refresh it. And I'm going to select another one. Let's see how one of my tracks, which is called How It Started, made it through. And I've downgraded it to a lame MP3 audio from Wave. This is what it sounds like. So it's a pretty, obviously orchestral and everything, but it has peaks and valleys. It's very dynamic in terms of, the difference between the quietest and loudest parts. It's not like everything pushed up against the glass the entire way, hyper compressed the whole way through. So I'm curious to see how it manages with How It Started. I'll press open and let's watch this guy load up here. It's pretty snappy on Chrome, I must admit. A little snappier than Safari was for me. So if I, want to get a compilation album out, I'm going to put it on all the streaming services, and this song is one of them. I obviously want to know what it's going to sound like once it makes it to the other end of this process. So we are almost done loading here, and I'm very curious to see what it would sound like if I uploaded it to YouTube, because I know it was a quiet master, because I master everything pretty quietly. Okay, so again, in keeping with the information I delivered at the beginning of this, on YouTube it's saying we're not doing anything. We are not going to turn it up. It is obviously too quiet. On Tidal, it's saying we're not going to do anything again because Tidal also doesn't turn quiet stuff up. On Spotify, however, it would turn it up 3.2 dBs, which makes me happy. I'm happy it's underneath the cutoff, which is minus 14 LUFS for Spotify. I'm happy that it's that. With Pandora, 3.7, and with iTunes, it's coming up as just +1. They just add 1 little dB of gain there. So that makes me pretty happy that my loudness is kind of in check, although I think I do need to do a bit of work to make sure that things are brought up a little bit for Spotify and I guess Pandora. I don't really care about Pandora. I never use it, but in the States it's pretty popular, I suppose. YouTube and Tidal, though, I really hope these guys start turning quiet stuff up. I know I've had a lot of complaints on my YouTube videos that they're too quiet. Yeah, so that's something that I have to learn, and this this website is super educational for that reason. Let's analyze another file. Let's see what happens when I upload maybe, let's see here. Let's do a super loud song. Actually, no, let's do Doing It Right. One of my favorite records, well mixed, well mastered, well tracked, all the rest of it. Doing It Right. I'll press open. Let's see how long it takes to analyze this guy. So there we go. So what it's telling us is it's going to be taken down almost 2 dBs on YouTube, almost, 3.5 dBs on Spotify, Tidal 3.2, Pandora 2.5, and -5 here on iTunes. And that is if you have the sound check on iTunes enabled. I believe that when I say sound check, that's their loudness normalization sort of ticker. That's their spigot. You turn it on and everything's normalized. I believe you don't really have a choice on YouTube, Spotify, Tidal, or Pandora. Those are all automatically loudness normalized. Whereas on iTunes, you get to choose whether you put the sound check feature on. So let's get back to this here. So again, this song, which was, revered and all the rest of it, it's still coming in a little bit too hot for these streaming services, which kind of makes sense a little bit. They can be forgiven. This record came out a little while ago, and maybe they weren't necessarily thinking of how it would sound, coming out of laptop speakers or anything off of Spotify, but still pretty interesting. I'm going to upload one more here. It's not going to be Glenn Campbell because probably no one cares about Glenn Campbell except for me on this channel. We're going to analyze another file. Let's choose instead A Dark Night. This is like a 16-minute track, Hans Zimmer, 39 bytes. I'm probably going to mess that up. I think it's megabytes. So let's add that. I'll press open. And this is actually a really interesting track because this is one of those tracks that people, everyone, not just like composer nuts or whatever. This is a huge track from a huge movie. People probably listen to this all the time on Spotify, on a playlist, on shuffle with a bunch of other Hans Zimmer tracks or popular tracks from, big blockbuster Hollywood movies. I'm very curious to see if these guys mastered things properly, loudness-wise, and if we have a dynamic experience. I know that this track for me I felt just a little bit too compressed. The horns are kind of all over the place, but that's just a personal gripe. But who knows? Maybe it's super dynamic and my memory is a little off. Okay, so it looks like I was wrong, and actually this track is very well within the ballpark for what would be considered to be an optimized track for these services. On YouTube, we don't really have to pay attention to this right now. YouTube, it's not going to go up at all, or Tidal. All that tells us is it's a little bit quiet for these streaming services. And that's a bit loaded. I'm not sure if it's a little bit quiet for these streaming services, but as far as, whether things would be turned up or not, they wouldn't on YouTube and Tidal. However, Spotify would bring it up a hair, right? 0.2 dBs. Pandora would bring it up, 0.7 dBs. iTunes, I'm not sure if that means that it would be brought up like 0.1 and maybe 0 is the default. They round out or something. But bottom line is this seems to be a pretty optimal track for these streaming services. So bravo, whoever mastered Hans Zimmer stuff here. This track is going to sound, well, it depends on the intention of the artist and the producer and the mastering engineer, but it's going to sound like a pretty good across all these streaming services. It's not going to be too loud, not going to be too compressed or too distorted. So yeah, this hopefully gives you a little bit of an understanding and an idea of how this website works. It's pretty speedy. It's pretty snappy. Why don't we move to the next section of this video, which is like my thoughts, what I think could be improved, what I really like, thorns and roses, if you will, about the loudnesspenalty.com. Okay, so how do I feel about all this loudness penalty, loudness normalization stuff? Well, it's probably no secret or surprise to a lot of people on the channel that I take this stuff very seriously. Dynamics in music, that your stuff sounds good, that your stuff is, for you, an ambassador on the web floating around. And you're, it's almost like writing a letter to someone like in World War II. Like you are transmitting your person. And nowadays, through an MP3, through a WAV file, that is an ambassador for the quality of your work as a whole. So it's really important to make sure that it sounds great, because it speaks to the quality of your work and what you do. And what I see a lot of people doing is pushing things way too far, mastering stuff way too loud, way too hot. And it could be, a sort of crowd mentality, a herd mentality. We got to do what everyone else is doing. It's got to be as loud as everyone else, or whatever. I'm not sure, a lack of sort of education or insight into how to make things sound really awesome, but also make things sound competitive. This is a great step in the right direction to helping you get insight into, what areas of your own process need to be tweaked. Because what I see a lot of people doing is making stuff hotter and louder, and all that does is incur distortion, clipping. It just gives the body of their sound a sort of dense, tubby vibe, which is not good. It's really hard to make stuff sound great and super loud at the same time. Many people fail. And now you don't have to worry about failing, because loudness normalization is coming as this great equalizer that is going to make sure that we can stop worrying about how loud things need to be and just focus on making our music sound great. And for some people that are thinking, I've heard this a lot, like, I don't want the streaming service to dictate how loud my stuff is. I'm kind of frustrated that they turn everything down. I want to be in control of, of the master fader, of the master bus, or whatever. Well, this gives you an insight into how loud, you need to be. So they're not really in control anymore. You get to see exactly what they're going to do once you put your stuff on their service and get it to the other side. So now you're kind of back in control of that experience. You're back in control of that master fader, because you can see if they're going to turn you up or turn you down. So all you have to do is play within those bounds, and you kind of regain agency and control of the loudness of your music. And this format here on the website, very easy to read, very easy to follow. I really like that. And so I think this is a very valuable tool for people who are mastering at home, who maybe don't have a ton of education in this, or people who are a little worried about, is my stuff going to sound good? Is it going to sound competitive or whatever? Now you know exactly what's going to happen. And if you ask to get the report right here on this little pink button, there's a great example of 2 Metallica tracks that arrive at different areas loudness-wise, and you can tell right away which one sounds better. I mean, it's a little bit leading the way that they phrase it. They're like, which one sounds better? Here's the number. But whatever. I mean, there's no magic tricks or whatever. You can clearly hear which one is more dynamic, more, punchy, and all the rest of it. And you'll see for yourself how much this stuff matters, how much this data matters. And whether we like it or not, this is where things are going. This is our job as composers, as music makers. We have to adapt. And streaming services, again, debut venue for new music. You better get used to this, because I can't see anything else overtaking this. CDs are not coming back. Vinyl is anemic in the grand scheme of things. Streaming services, this is where it's at. And if you want to be taken seriously, again, your work is an ambassador for you. It's out there floating around in the wild. It better sound really good. And now you have more insight into how to make it sound really good. So those are the kind of roses. Let's get to the thorns. Some things I wish this service did differently. Some things I don't quite understand about it. So some things I wish this thing did a little bit differently. And mind you, I have to be fair, because this is a brand new tool. I don't think it's been through, it hasn't been through exhaustive year after year beta testing or anything. This is one of those like labors of love that's out there that's meant to help people. So I have to qualify some of the statements I make and say Ian Shepherd and the team at Meter Plugs, obviously, thank you so much for this. But there are a couple things that I wish were a little bit different. The first is I wish I could just upload like 5 or 6 tracks and have like, a bunch of different, as far as I know, I can't, for example, I can't go into analyze another file, select a file here, and I can't take these guys. Yeah, see, I'm holding shift to select more than one, and I can't do that. This would be great. I know, especially because Ian is one of these guys who's like, he doesn't master singles anymore, or he tries not to. It's mostly just, albums or the rest of it. So I'd love to know, just to upload all of my albums, or, a whole folder of tracks, and just get a sense of how they're all going to play, whether it's an EP or an LP, and get like a nice, readout of everything. I don't know why that's not there now. Maybe it'll be in the future. Maybe it's just like, this is just meant for one-offs or something, or most people are just doing one-offs, so that's why that's there. But that'd be great to include in the future. The other thing I don't quite understand is, a lot of people multitask, or they like to think they can multitask. I'm one of those people. So I have a bunch of tabs open, right? And I'm trying to do a whole bunch of things at once. One thing I noticed about this, and it could be an ad blocker issue or something, because I have an ad blocker right there on the top right. One thing I notice is that I can't just upload this track and then go do something else on my browser. So what I mean by that is, I'll go select a file. We'll do Wichita Lineman. And watch this. So it's processing the audio. It's going pretty quickly, but I'll stop it when it gets to the P. And by stop it, I mean I'll go flip to another tab, and we saw where it left off, right? So I'll go do something else. I'll go check some emails. You're not going to see my emails. So, but anyway, I'm basically not on that tab anymore. I'll go back to Chrome, and we left off at the P, right? I'll go back to the analyzer. It stops the minute I stop it at the O. I'm going to go do something else. It stops. It doesn't do it in the background, which would be so helpful. I mean, most people use tools like this, like batch processing. Like I have XLD over here, which is a great tool for converting music from lossless to from lossless to lossy or whatever. You just send a bunch of stuff into it and forget it, and it spits the audio out on the other side, or whatever. We upload stuff to YouTube and go do something else. But watch when I go back to the loudness page, the loudness penalty page again. It's not done. It keeps going. So you kind of have to stay glued on this page for the processing to be completed, which I don't understand. I don't know why we can't. That just to me feels like they didn't intend for that. It's got to be something on my end, again, an ad blocker or something going on. But that to me is extremely inconvenient, that I have to stay glued to this page and watch that loading bar fill up. But those are two, very minor complaints. And who knows, maybe they'll be fixed in another iteration or something like that. Maybe the processing is such that the page needs to be open. Or I don't really know. I don't know how this stuff works. The other thing is, it would be great if there was some kind of tool that let you know, some sort of like grade or score at the end of it, which indicated to you that like you are going to sound great across all of these guys. Because let's be frank, I mean, most people, even though we know Spotify and YouTube are probably the most popular right now, Apple Music is up and coming, right? Pandora, I don't know. Tidal might be in the toilet by like 2 months from now. But it'd be great if you had some sort of indication, some sort of check mark that like you are going to sound nice and loud across all these guys, and you get your score for that. Or you're going to sound, if loudness isn't your goal across all these platforms, maybe your goal is like, I want to sound super dynamic, but also I want the quality to be good or something. So loudness isn't your goal, it's something else. You get a score for that across all these platforms. So just some sort of batch grade, that lets you know where you stand for a given kind of vibe that you're going for. Loud, dynamic, whatever, across all of these streaming services. Because, everyone might love your music, but they're probably not all listening to it on the same service. So that would be important, I think, for me, if I was to use this tool and rely on it. But, I mean, those are three little thorns here. And at the end of the day, this is a quality product, and it's free, and you don't have to surrender your email unless you want to. And even if you do, it's just an email. It's not a big deal, but you're totally anonymous. The whole thing is above board, not saving anything. I just think this is super helpful because, again, I know I repeat myself a lot on this channel, but you are going to be mastering pretty much everything yourself these days, unless you reach that Zimmer level and you see the results, right? From the Zimmer track, from The Dark Knight, like, awesome. sounds great across all the streaming services, whatever. But until we get there, until you get there as an artist and you have someone looking out for you, or someone at least you can have conversations with about, hey, are you thinking about how this is going to land on Spotify and all this stuff? You got to do everything yourself. And that's why these tools are so valuable and so essential, especially, again, if you want to make sure that the stuff that you have out there is the ambassador for you and your sort of floating CV for 4 minutes or however long your track is. And tools like this, Loudness Penalty, I think, are so smart and clever and handy, and just and very we welcome this stuff. So thank you so much for watching this video, Ian Shepherd and the people at Meter Plugs. Thanks a lot. It's funny, the first time I didn't have to download a trial or pay a subscription or get a 15-day window or whatever. Anyone can go do this. This is no there's no velvet rope that lets you in. Anyone can go do this. Loudness Penalty. I'll put some information about it in the description. I'm sure I missed something, but anyway, I wanted to get this video out. Have a great week and take care.